Hi, I'm James Eade of the Eade Foundation, but you can call me Jim. At the Eade Foundation, I want to talk about, but first a little bit more about me. Who am I? Well, the first thing you can tell about me is that I'm a chess player. And I started pretty young, and I was pretty good in high school. I could win adult tournaments when I was in high school. And I became a FIDE master. And what's a FIDE master? A FIDE master is the kind of guy person that can fight with grandmasters but not become one. So this is basically, I turned my attention to organizing chess tournaments and writing books. And Chess for Dummies is the most popular book that I've ever written. And I've done so many things in chess that in 2018, I was given an award from the United States Chess Federation for an outstanding career achievement. But that's enough about me. What about the Eade Foundation? The Eade Foundation is dedicated to building communities through chess. And if you're part of a community, you're never alone. So it doesn't matter what country you're from. It doesn't matter what language you speak. If you play chess, you're part of a chess community. If you get online, if you have online access, you can play anyone, anywhere, at any time. And if you are not part of you can't have internet access. If you're not part of the online chess world, then the Eade Foundation can help you get you started wherever you are. It doesn't matter to us what country you live in. It doesn't matter to us what language you speak. We can send you chess equipment so that you can start a chess community wherever you are. So that's what the Eade Foundation is all about. And we've got programs started, help programs get started in 5 different African countries. We're working in North Lebanon right now. I just put an order for that, but Nicaragua, and we've done things coast to coast in the United States. So, and we asked, it's a charitable organization. That means I don't make any money, but we do accept donations. And one of the ways you can help us a great deal, is if you go to our website. And there it is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. You go to the website and donate. And because if you help us, you help them. And these kinds of people are the types of people that you would want to help if you ever knew them. And when you do something like this, sometimes you get something like this in your inbox. And it just warms your heart. And you go, that's why I'm doing it. No, it's not for monetary returns, but it's for something else entirely. But this is the Chess Files. The answers are out there. So what's the question of the day? Well, I wanted to share a screen here just a minute, if I can, because my producer is not helping. And so I have to do this all myself. And there was a book, The Queen's Gambit, written by Walter Tevis. And this was a great, whatever you think of the literary quality of the book, it was all about chess and someone playing chess. And so we kind of thought, this is pretty cool in the chess world. We said, this is great. So then the question was, is his character Beth Harmon in there? Was it based on anybody in particular? Somebody that he might have known? Was it a composite? I don't know. So I thought I would ask a guest on to help me answer these questions. And the guest was Diana Lanni. And Diana, would you join us? Oh my goodness, there she is. Hi.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, thank you for joining this show. And asking around, people told me to talk to you. Was this character Beth Harmon in Walter Tevis's book, The Queen's Gambit, which incidentally was made into a Netflix film, and was apparently very popular, and has helped popularize chess again in the United States. And the question I'm bombarded with this question is, was Beth Harmon based on anyone? And what do you have to say to answer that question?
Well, Walter Tevis.
A little delay.
Wrote many books, and a lot of them were semi-autobiographical.
That's okay. Welcome to live TV. Live streaming has these little glitches from time to time. And Diana, I'm going to fill in the air while you get unfrozen, because you're frozen right now. And hopefully you will unfreeze. There you go. You muted yourself, but unfortunately you muted yourself. So if you can unmute. There you go. Oh, you muted again. Unmute. There you go.
There
So
we go.
Walter Travis wrote many books, and they were semi-autobiographical. And like he wrote The Hustler, I think. Are you there, Diana? There you are.
Can you? Unfortunately, I'm having trouble hearing you now.
Oh. Oh no.
But I can lean in a little.
Okay.
Yes, he wrote The Hustler, and
okay.
There was a man who claimed to be the character. The character was based on his life, and his name was New York Fats. In real life, that was his moniker in pool halls. And he claimed that Minnesota Fats was based on his life. And recently it was found out that that was true. Original manuscripts of Walter Tevis's book had New York Fats crossed out and Minnesota put in. So the man that claimed to be Minnesota Fats and was derided for it all of his life, but who popularized pool again for the world, is vindicated. And in the same way, I believe that I and maybe several other women chess players were instrumental in inspiring Walter to write his book. It is about himself and his own fantasies of becoming a great player. He was a 1400 player, which is about an average tournament player. And he had some experiences with being hospitalized for, I think, about 8 months when he was a child. He had, and at that age, anyone would feel abandoned, I think, and that's where the orphanage part comes in. So it was quite, and Bobby Fischer was very influential on him too. But when the book came out, everyone said, Diana, this person is speaking your lines. Those are the things you say, and it looks like your life. And a friend of mine went to the publisher and asked whether the book was based on my life. And they said, oh, it couldn't have been because he wrote it in 1975. And that turns out not to be true. He did write a first chapter, but it was completely different than what the story that ended in what was on Netflix. It was a chapter about a middle-aged woman who lived in a cabin. And it wasn't until 82 that he suddenly became inspired to actually write the book. And guess when 82 was? It was at the height of my chess career. I was zooming up and had fantastic results. I was in the Olympiad then, and I lived in the same circle that Walter did. I was the only visible chess woman in New York City. I played in Washington Square Park every day. I was at the game room every night. And those were the two places that Walter hung out also. And I have always been an open, honest person. And if somebody asks me what my feelings are about chess and life, I'll tell them. So it appears that a bit of it is most probably cribbed directly from my life, and that I inspired him to write the book.
Yeah. And it sounds like he was in a little bit of denial that other people, that he would write about other people, like he changed New York Fats to Minnesota Fats, and he would say, oh, I wrote it in 1975. When really he wrote it in 1982. So maybe his denial,
I think his denial was very upset about the whole. Yeah, I think that what really changed him, because before that, he had been an English lit teacher, and he did encourage his students to seek inspiration in from real life, as all authors do,
Of course,
because
yeah.
otherwise all of your characters end up just being yourself.
Right.
And he even admitted that when he wrote The Man That Fell to Earth, that
Oh, another one.
he
Yeah.
realized afterwards that he'd seen some other movie or read another book and that he'd cribbed it entirely and didn't realize that it until he saw the movie again that it had inspired him. So he was very okay with it until The Hustler happened. And I think it was the personality. I think his name was Robert Walderone,
I
who
don't know.
was called, also known as New York Fats. This man got into Tevis's face and started picketing movie theaters, saying Walter Tevis has stolen my life and isn't giving me
Oh,
credit. And I think it just really hurt his feelings, um, that this man created
oh, I see.
a whole identity for himself, and he became very possessive about his characters and said, absolutely no one that I have ever written about has ever been anything but from my mind.
I get it.
So I think
But
I got
you,
a little bit of the backlash there.
yeah, but you didn't try to capitalize yourself on this
Not
Netflix
at all.
phenomenon.
I
No,
had no
of course
interest
not.
in that.
Right. Right. So even if he were alive today, you wouldn't have caused him any grief by telling us. So I
No,
don't think
no.
we're
What?
we're doing any harm or disservice to him by talking about what he may have based that character on. But of course, he took artistic license with it. It's not all you. It's but I'm sure, especially if there's lines in the dialogue that were things that you said. I mean, it's not you don't have to be a rocket scientist to make the connection. Obviously, you had
Yeah,
an influence, right? Right.
yeah.
So
And I
what
think
did
that
you think?
Rachel Prado also might have been part of the inspiration, because the idea of an 8-year-old girl becoming a champion, I think that Rachel was one of the Collins kids when she was 8 years old.
Wow.
Um, of course, when he wrote the book, she was not really playing much anymore. I think she only played in women's events and maybe once a year. But she
I
was a
see.
brilliant player at 8 years old, I
Right.
believe.
Right. But you mentioned that you had represented the United States in the Olympiad, and just for the viewing audiences, hi mom, that might not be aware, the Olympiad is a team competition between countries. It's a lot like what's going on in the Olympics in Tokyo right now, but it's for chess. So you have to be a very strong player to be selected to your team to represent your country in these events. So you had some talk. You were walking the talk. You weren't just saying I'm a good player. I was. You couldn't have been anything but a good player if you were on the Olympiad team. Is that fair to
And
say?
when I was about, I had just become master, gotten my master rating. Uh, I guess it was at the sometime in 82. I don't have all the dates correct, but it looked like I was going to take off and become you know, a, the third US woman master in the United States and go on to better things. Unfortunately, there were a few bad incidents that happened that, with a tournament director who refused to turn in my results, and I got a job, and I also got hurt very badly,
Oh,
in an incident where I was attacked, and sitting became excruciatingly painful. But yes, I was. I also represented the United States in Israel. They had a separate Olympiad, and so I got to travel to a lovely Netanya to in Israel and
oh,
represent the
cool.
United States there in the alternate Olympiads.
I never got strong enough to play in the Olympiad because of guys like this guy, John, Hall of Fame
I could
Grandmaster.
flash that picture again.
Yeah, oh, sure, sure. John
Who
Fedor,
is it?
Grandmaster, Hall of Fame
Oh gosh, I
Grandmaster.
didn't. My telephone is so small; it's hard for
Oh
me to
yeah,
see the pictures.
yeah. He's in the U.S. Chess Hall of Fame, and one of my best buddies in
Oh,
chess.
Fedorowicz, a brilliant player.
Brilliant.
He
Yes.
helped me actually in one of my key games. In the last major tournament that I played that made me a master, I had an adjourned position against Sergei Kudrin, where I was winning a pawn ending, and it was adjourned. And Fedorowicz helped me analyze it that night. Unfortunately, we didn't do a very good job, and it ended up being a draw instead of me winning.
Yeah, maybe your
But
attention
I
wasn't
also
fully on the board. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, great guy. And I love to make fun of him. But and he loves to make fun of me. So it's we ended up forming a
I
relationship
love
by
John.
yeah.
He's such a funny guy.
He's hysterically funny. Yeah, he's got great stories, and I'm trying to get him to write a book with me. And at the U.S. Open, I'm going
Oh,
to double down on my attempts to get him to write it. But I really wanted to ask you about the Beth Harmon character and the Netflix series, The Queen's Gambit in general. What did you think of it?
I thought it was beautiful. I love the response to it. I mean, I think we have COVID to thank for a lot of its popularity because people were locked inside. But the story is just delightful, and uh, I love the costumes and the actress that played Beth Harmon was wonderful. I loved that the her stepmother didn't turn out to be a bad guy. Like in almost every story like that, the stepmother becomes the evil person, but instead was quite supportive of her. It was a lovely fantasy version of what chess could be like if it were valued in America.
Okay, we're getting some comments from the audience. George Meridanian is telling us that uh, Minnesota Fats was Rudolph Walter Walderone, born in 1913
Right,
and lived to 1996. And he said that
right.
you had a draw in the 1982 Olympiad in Lucerne with Grapotashvili. I'm sure I'm butchering the
That's
name.
correct.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And you were around 26, 27 or something like that. And Rachel Crotto was born in 1958, and there's a 3-year difference between Rachel and Diana. These are all George's comments. And he's telling me that George
Uh-huh.
Fedorowicz was born in 1958 in New York City. He became a GM in 1986. So he may have been helping you with the Kudrin game before he was the grandmaster. Maybe that's why you only drew him.
Uh-huh.
So thank you, George, for
I
all
want to
those
just
comments.
flash this up on the screen. I want to do a plug for New in Chess. This is the
Oh yeah,
article they did on, let me see if I can center this,
holy cow!
on Beth Harmon. The title is Finding Beth Harmon. And this was their New in Chess's cover story that went to all the countries they serve. And it's a 5-page article about why I was probably the inspiration for Beth Harmon.
So maybe that's why they told me to talk to you, is because it was in Newland Chess. And that's a lovely picture of you, probably about that age that you would have been hanging around with Walter. That picture of you, if you could show it again, that's a younger version of you.
Sure. Let me see if I can. That is me at one of the U.S. closed championships. Everything's backwards. So there,
Yeah.
that's me. And that's in U.S. Championship in Berkeley, the closed invitationals. And here's
Oh, yeah.
another
In
photo of
Berkeley.
me.
I probably was there. Yeah. That's
You
cool.
were there?
I think in Berkeley for the
Yeah,
U.S. championships, yes. And
yeah.
I was there, watching the games. I was just another one of the spectators. I wasn't playing.
I That was
I
a
wasn't
wonderfully
strong enough
fun
to play.
tournament. I roomed with John Fedorowicz and his
Uh-huh.
girlfriend, and we
Oh,
had
Angela?
the
No, no.
major party at the end of the tournament at our apartment.
No,
Chess is not just about playing chess. There are
absolutely not.
wonderful parties afterwards.
Yes.
Here's another photo from that period, if you'd like to see it.
Of course I
Let me
will.
see if I can center this. There's me with shorter hair.
Uh-huh.
I'm sitting with Paul McGreal. That's during my backgammon days.
Oh, okay. So you were a games player, backgammon and chess. But so
Any game.
you suffered an
Go
injury
ahead.
that prevented you probably from sitting, and uh, you know, and you also got a job. So that was my excuse. I got a career, and that really interfered with my chess. So you stopped playing competitive chess at a certain point. But this time that we're talking about, your master level strength, and you earned the master title. You didn't. It wasn't given to you. It wasn't an honorary title. You had earned it over the board play, and so you can relate to this Beth Harmon character. What was it like? Oh, my producer's yelling in my ear. I forgot to do the human interest questions. Where did you grow up? Where do you live now? And how did you get started in chess?
I grew up in Gainesville, Florida, but very quickly was transferred to Washington, D.C. My father was a computer programmer, one of the early ones,
Right.
and he was a chess player. So I tagged along to chess tournaments with him as a child.
I see.
And he always had told me, if you're ever down on your luck, you should learn to play chess because no women play chess in America, and you can just study for a year or two and become one of the top players. Because
Oh,
those were the days of Lisa Lane when he was telling me this. The
yes.
A
Lisa Lane,
woman who,
cover of the magazine. Yeah, was devoted to her.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So that was good advice. Good for you, Dad. But the
it
idea
was
of
great
going to
advice. And
tournaments as a young girl,
but
you would weren't you bored out of your mind?
I'm sorry, my
Yeah.
sound is very bad. Can you repeat that?
I was wondering, going around to chess tournaments as a little girl, weren't you bored out of your mind?
I spent all my time in the swimming pools.
Coping
I,
mechanisms.
I, yeah, I was just a kid running around. I mean, I was 4 years
Yeah.
old
But
when
you
my
knew
father
about,
was Florida state champion.
oh,
And
very cool.
yeah,
So you
yeah.
got
And when
introduced to chess that way.
yes, I always knew that it was a possibility. I knew the rules, most of
Yeah,
them. I maybe not en passant. I maybe didn't know exactly how to castle, but I knew pretty much how the pieces moved all my life.
right.
And my first, when I started playing seriously, I was attending art school in Maryland, and Larry Kaufman opened a chess club for Bill Goichberg on the second story of the art
Shout out
school
to
I was
Larry
going to.
Kaufman.
And he came down one day and said, "Can anybody draw a picture of a knight for me for a poster for our club?" And I said, "I can because I'm a chess player." And he said, "You're a chess player, huh? Come on up. We've got a chess club." So I decided, I actually was at a fairly miserable time in my life because I knew I couldn't become a professional artist. It's very, who you
Competitive.
know, and I didn't
Oh,
know
sure.
anybody. And
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I just couldn't figure out life. And I thought, maybe if I just try to figure out these 64 little squares, maybe that'll give me some context to understand the universe in, to understand my place and the rules of life. And I went up there and they crushed me. Mark Deason and Larry Kaufman and Phil Collier. It was a
Well,
very
they're
strong
good
club
players. Yeah.
at
Yeah.
Sam Greenlaw. Eberline. It was the Washington Plumbers all hung out there.
Oh,
And
right.
they would give me 10 minutes to 1 minute and see how many games they could beat me before their 1 minute ran out. So they humiliated me.
Well,
And one person there
you bit off a little
humiliated
more
me
than you could
so
chew.
much that I said, darn it, I'm going to learn this game, because this person told me girls can't play chess. Girls are too stupid. They don't have the right kinds of minds. And
Oh, so the
I took
gauntlet
that
was
as a
thrown down.
challenge.
Yes. Yes.
Yep,
You and I
yep.
had a lot in common in that way. I wanted to figure out the universe, so I started with the 64 squares. Maybe if I learned those rules, I could figure out everything else. And
Oh,
then
really?
and then you
Yeah.
get challenges. You're not good enough, because I lived in a rural, remote part of Massachusetts, and the people I was playing in Boston thought, "Oh, you're a farmer," and they gave me that kind. So it made me more determined to play against them and to defeat them. So we have that in common, and that's interesting to know about your background. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit more
Yes.
about Lisa
Yes.
Lane. She was in Sports Illustrated cover story. She was also covered in New York Times
And
Magazine. So that's pretty cool.
right.
That was before your time, but she was an inspiration to you, or
Yes.
to your dad. Yeah, yeah, very good.
Definitely,
And you,
she was an inspiration. I was working as a clerk, a retail clerk at Lord and Taylor in Washington, D.C., and I was making about $1.60 an hour. And I remember one Christmas, I was setting up a display for Christmas gifts, and it was a chessboard. And I looked at it, I thought, here I'd been working for almost 2 years as a retail clerk after high school, and I had done terribly in high school. Had about a second grade education, and I said, this can't be my life, just going on as a retail clerk. And setting up that board, I said, I'm going to do it. One of these days, I am going to become a chess player. It was
good
my
for
way
you.
out of the nothingness of my life.
So Anoma
You
asked
know,
the
the
question about what were you doing before being a chess player, but you have already answered it. You said art was your first passion. Art was your
oh
first
yes,
passion. Yeah, and then chess. Chess
art
became your
and
passion.
architecture. I
Oh,
was doing floor plans of houses when I was a baby.
oh,
I loved architecture and still do.
yeah,
And I spent all the first 6 months of COVID studying the techniques of Vermeer and Rembrandt and all of the great artists to learn how to do the darks and lights first in sepia or just black and white, and then
right,
layering tints over it for
right.
portraiture.
I'm just interested in architecture. One of my favorite cities to visit was Prague. Have you ever been to Prague?
I have not been to Prague.
Yeah,
I
one of
got
the
to a
things
lot of cities.
yeah,
I I got to a lot of cities as a backgammon player. I got to Amsterdam, Geneva, Monte Carlo, London. Um, it was just a whirlwind when I was a backgammon player. In a
yeah,
very short time, I saw a lot of Europe.
yeah. The reason I mentioned Prague is because the architecture, just walking down a street, you could see different types of architecture on the same street from different periods. And it was so fascinating to me. And I never had your interest or passion about architecture, but it was amazing to me. So put that on your bucket list, a city to visit to appreciate
Okay.
architecture. But um,
I want to
so,
go to
so
Japan. I love the architecture of Japan.
yeah, that's on my bucket list too. My wife has gone, but I have not, and not even for the Olympics, they couldn't get me there. And travel is returning, but hopefully it will come back to reasonably approximately normal. We'll be able to go places again pretty soon, because this sheltering in place is getting old, and
Hopefully,
I'm
within a
sure.
couple of years, all this.
Yeah, yeah, and the other thing I wanted to ask you about the Beth Harmon character. She, one of my favorite scenes is her first tournament that she walks into, and how she was treated as like, oh, you can't play him. He's too good. You can't be in the open section. And did you have an experience like that, or is that seemed real to me? But
Yes,
did it seem
yes,
real to
that
you?
happened repeatedly to me. And I actually enjoyed it after I became a good enough player, like a 1400 to 1600 player, going to random small tournaments and or college community centers where there were chess clubs, and going in and them thinking, oh, it's a girl, and then clobbering them all. It was
Right,
enormous fun.
right. Well, I
I
traveled
was
around
also
the
a Go ahead.
I was going to say I was traveling around the country, job shifts and things like that, and I would always find the local chess club, and I would walk in. And I was always interested because it's a fairly intimidating environment to walk into, and they don't ask you your name; they ask you your rating. What are you rated? And then they make a judgment about whether you have any worth or not. So walking into a chess
That's
club as
interesting.
a woman,
Nobody ever asked me my rating.
they
They
assumed
always said,
because you
"What
were
are
a
you doing
girl.
here?"
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So it must have been doubly, triply intimidating to walk into an environment like that.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the rush. I really
So
look forward to crushing them.
what would you say to a
I had
girl?
been a pool I had been a pool pooter I had been a pool shooter before that in high school. I skipped most of high school to shoot pool out on Old Georgetown Road and was quite good.
I
And
know people like you.
so they
I had
going
friends like
to
you.
new
Yes.
clubs and beating men, I just loved it.
So what would you say? Because you got that confidence maybe from pool, or you had that confidence all along. What would you say to a young girl walking into it's still majority male dominated sport? It's still an intimidating atmosphere to walk into. How would you encourage them to do it? To have maybe they aren't born with the confidence that you had. How would they do it?
I know it must be difficult. And with some of my students, and as a matter of fact, all of my female students have had troubles with this because as far as actually walking in, I don't know what to tell them other than that they just have to do it. And I think that's a good reason for having girls tournaments to get them used to it. But I almost all of my students had trouble with beating people. They didn't like the word beating. They thought that in order to be nice, they should lose. That beating someone was a mean thing to do. And what I always told them, and I think it might have been Jenny Shahade that told me this. Someone advised me, said, tell them someone has to win. Why can't it be you?
Okay, that's a good
And
piece of
that
advice.
was resonated with some of them, but even then they had reluctance. And I experienced this myself when I was playing up. I had a World Open where I beat or drew 7 Masters in a row, and 2 of the draws I gave when I was a piece up because I felt sorry for my opponent. I often had trouble with feeling the same sorts of prejudices, like men are better. It's bad to hurt their feelings. If I played a woman, I thought I would win automatically. If I played a child, I thought I'd win I had the same internal prejudices that almost everyone has. And it is difficult walking into that first tournament. But any woman that walks into a tournament, she will get a lot of attention. So I think a lot of women would enjoy that. It's sort of like a man becoming a dancer. I had a boyfriend once who became a modern dancer, and he was swarmed with women. He had so many beautiful women in love with him. He had the pick of the pun, it was everywhere.
Well,
And one complaint I got from men all the time was, well, of course I listened to her because she was a woman, and so I was distracted. And my answer to that is, I have to play against men every single game. How distracted do you think I am? I mean, I have to play someone of the opposite sex every game. So that excuse of, well, I lost because it was someone of the opposite sex is nonsense.
it is complete nonsense. But there are these social pressures, these peer pressures, and it's why sometimes we drive women from STEM or STEAM, the science and technology and math, and these types of environments, because they get peer pressure. Even when they're young and they start to care about, when they're too young, they don't care. When they get to a certain age, they start to care about their peer pressure, and they start to get influenced away from them. And how do we encourage them to stick with it, to stay with your passion, follow your passion, is what I try to tell them. But your idea is somebody's got to win. Why not you? Is a good one. It's a good message.
Yes.
I'm trying to add that.
Also, I very strongly encourage separate education. I think that what happens bad happens when girls get to junior high, or that 7th grade time, when puberty starts and, sexuality comes out. That's when girls start conforming and wanting to be acceptable, and they get bombarded with the rules of how to be an attractive female. So I really encourage parents to keep their girls, if they can afford it, in a separate school, to go to a girls only school. I think the education is so much better because of the lack of discrimination, the lack of distraction, and the lack of that kind of sexual pressure to start appearing feminine, which destroys so many great talents. I had a student.
My wife totally agrees with you. And I hope society changes so that's no longer necessary, but at least for now, maybe it is. But it's got to be a way of encouraging women to follow their passion, to be who they are supposed to be.
Yes.
And not discourage them from being who they are. And it doesn't matter.
That's the big problem now. And I'm hoping that that Queen's Gambit can perhaps give that push. And I recently lost my mother. I had been taking care of my mother for the past 7 years in the DC area, and she recently died. And I'm certainly nowhere over it yet, but now that my life is my own again, I hope to get involved in. There's so many local opportunities to get involved with girls, especially girls and women at risk. For instance, working in the prison programs, working with urban girls at risk. I am going to throw myself into that.
Hats off to you. Tip of the hat. That's such a wonderful use of your talent and resources. And you have to take care of yourself
first.
What I
have to give. It's the one thing I can pass on.
That's why I started the EAT Foundation, because I figured how can I get back to society? Well, I can give chess back. It gave so much to me when I was young, going through the teenage angst years. Why not give it back? And if I have the resources, why shouldn't I share them? So we're kindred spirits in many ways, Diana, and I really, really enjoyed having you as a guest here. We're getting to the point where my producer's barking at me that it's time to wrap up. Is there anything that I forgot to ask you, that I forgot to hit on, that stress, the message that you want to send to the viewing audience?
I'm sure I'll think of something in a while.
Yes.
Right now, we never got to talk about Steve Brandwein, which you wanted to talk about. Maybe another time.
No, let's do that. I think that's a wonderful thing, because I did want to talk a little bit about how did you know Steve, and I'll tell you a little bit how I knew him. This is a picture of Steve Brandwein, someone who meant a lot to Diana and to me, but at different stages in our lives. So what was your experience with being friends with Steve?
Steve Brandwein was, after I left, I was at University of Michigan. I lost my financial aid, even though I was on my way to law school, had a very high GPA, and financial aid lost my application in my last year. And my chess career was blossoming. I was invited to the Marshall Chess School. So I moved to Manhattan and lived very close to the game room where Steve Brandwein made his living playing chess for dollars. And if you don't know, oh, my battery's almost going. Hold on. And if you don't know, I'm going to just move over to my battery. If you don't know Steve Brandwein, ask someone about it or look it up. But he was influential with so many players, including Bobby Fischer, I think, and was a brilliant man. And he was one of the most egoless humans I'd ever met. And we spent almost every day together. I was deeply in love with him for many, many, many years. After we were forced to leave New York, after the game room closed, I got him jobs in California, working with me, working with others, and we stayed in contact till his death, and I helped him with that also. He was the most important human in my life, throughout my life.
Well, I can't add anything to that, but I will tell you this, that, you know, if I could get a draw with Steve at Blitz, I felt like I was hot stuff. And also, any subject I wanted to talk about, he knew. He had done a lot of reading about anything that was on my mind. I could talk about.
He was my teacher. Anything. Everything that I didn't know, he was able to teach me. He'd give me a book. Right. He gave me a reading list. Every year or every 6 months, he'd give me a reading list because I wanted to know the truth about how the world worked, not just from the Western perspective, but from the whole world perspective. I wanted to learn about colonialism and how other countries saw themselves instead of just the Western perspective of, us big guns perspective. Yeah. And he was wonderful. I went on the Shelby Lyman show back when we were covering the KK match. And Steve, I would go up there sometimes. And who else? Was that Shelby Lyman? And Jimmy Sherwin was on the... Right. Yeah, he was a very funny man also.
Oh, I
didn't
know that about him.
He could recite Jabberwocky, which really impressed me.
Yeah. Oh, Lewis Carroll reference. Shout out. Okay. But that, Steve, wherever he lived, New York, Boston, Seattle, San Francisco, he added to the chess culture wherever he went. And people that can call him a friend were blessed. And it was a sad day when he passed.
One of the great angels of this world, even outside of chess.
I agree. Outside of chess,
it wasn't just about chess. He was just one of those great people in the world.
Right. Right.
And he still visits me. I dream about him quite often.
Yeah. He did touch many souls. So thank you again for being on the show. And I'm going to wrap up. I'll send you a link to the show, and you can pass it on to whoever you want. And we'll just say that this show has been dedicated to the memory of Steve Brandwein. And thank you. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much for your foundation, Jim. And thank you for having me today.
My pleasure. And Bye-bye. I'll say goodbye now for now.
Yes. All
right. That was Diana Lanni, and she talked about the character of Beth Harmon, written by The Queen's Gambit, the book written by Walter Tevis. And Tevis may have based it a lot on her, because they hung out in the same places in New York City when he was writing about this book, right? Starting to write the book. So this was fascinating to me, a little insight that I did not have before. And I'm so glad that our mutual friends told me to talk to her. And but this has been the Chess Files. The answers are out there. And I want you to know that if you help the Foundation, you will help other people. And so it's all about helping each other. And that's why we are dedicating this show to Steve Brandwein, because, man, the guy was an endless resource for everyone, everywhere. Anywhere he went, he was there to help others learn chess, play chess, or talk about anything. And it was amazing how well read that person was. So we'll see you 1 p.m. Eastern time on Fridays, or you'll see me. See you then.